feet behind them. My husband and I couldn't be much further from the typical pastor and pastor's wife, or so we're told. He loves to cook and is much better at laundry than I am. We argue over who is the bigger introvert. I don't play the piano or help with children's ministry. No one has ever in my whole life described me as sweet or quiet. And in the past year, I've had pink hair a handful of times. Whether or not we fit the stereotypical description of a family in church ministry, at that moment, I imagine we felt what thousands of ministers of the gospel had felt before us, and I imagine we'll feel it again in the future. It was Easter 2016, our third Easter together as a church, and we'd anticipated it. Holy anticipation, sacred expectation. We were both hoping for some revival. We'd made invitation cards for everyone in our church weeks before and asked them to pray over who they wanted to invite. We'd held prayer gatherings to ask for God's power to be displayed among our people that day. Nick, my husband, had prepped an amazing sermon and then preached his heart out. But friends, it just didn't go down like we had pictured. Nick had seen a few people fall asleep during the sermon, and from where we sat in the back, we could see people looking bored, using their phones during worship. I'm sure God moved in people's hearts and shifted things in the spiritual space, but outwardly it looked like any other Sunday, or even a little worse. It felt like the dreaded off Sunday, which flew in the face of the Sunday we'd anticipated, planned, prayed over, and hoped for. So we sat in the back like two young kids who'd lost their little league game. We tried to encourage each other a little bit, rallied enough to say goodbye to everyone, tore down our mobile church, we meet in an elementary school, and took our kids to lunch to celebrate Easter. We didn't talk much for the rest of the day about what had happened that morning, but instead shifted gears and discussed what the upcoming spring break would look like for our family. The tension was thick. We'd hoped God was going to show up and do something incredible. We'd hoped for life change at least and revival at best. We were doing all of this for God, so wasn't He going to show us His presence and His power? The next morning, in a quiet moment, I let myself pull the string a little bit. As I spent time with the Lord, I got honest and open with my Father and told Him how I felt about our Easter. I cried about my unmet expectations and what seemed like the lackluster spiritual state of our church. I told Him how hard it was to be a church planter's wife, and it was feeling particularly difficult with so little visible fruit and outward change. And then finally, when I was done telling Him how I felt about it, I decided to be quiet for a moment and let Him tell me how He felt about it. I asked if there was any correction or reproof for me, any part of this problem in which I'd been complicit without realizing it. It's worth noting that I didn't anticipate a rebuke. I thought He might give me some piece of scripture or sense that we were doing all we could do and confirm that this was simply everyone else's fault. True story. I didn't sit long before something interesting happened in my brain. As I replayed the day, 3 particular conversations stood out. If my memory of the day was like a fluid stream of water before, now there were 3 ugly boulders disrupting the stream. 3 big boulders that didn't belong there. And these recollections didn't have anything to do with other people's sins or issues. They were about me. I had had 3 separate conversations with 3 separate women in our church that Easter morning, all of them eerily similar and kind of embarrassing to remember. And if they were embarrassing in my own mind, you can imagine how humbling it is for me to share them with you now. But that's where we got to start, sisters. Someone has to go first. I'd gone to each of these women individually and told them about something that was on my mind, something I felt compelled to share and excited to talk about. I'd initiated these conversations with my friends, these women of God, on this super spiritual and holy day of Easter with an agenda. I point this out in such an explicit way because you need to picture it fully. These conversations didn't happen accidentally, and no one was trying to fill the space or make light banter. I went there with intention.